All right, I believe we are recording. Do you guys see the little recording thing in the upper left-hand corner?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. Do you see the whole screen here? Do you see also my Zoom?
I see just your screen. Oh, I see your
Cool.
Zoom now. I see
Oh,
your
you do
face.
see the Zoom?
You're just really small up
do
in the
you-
corner.
Okay, but it's just me. You're not seeing like everything that I'm seeing on.
Yes.
I see. Okay, cool.
I
Just
see
wanna make
loan
sure.
modification, short sales, and foreclosures on your computer.
Awesome. Okay, so this is what we're talking about today. So we're talking about loan modification, short sales, and foreclosures. We are in an interesting time because back when we did all of these, it was a very slow process. It was slow then sudden, right? And will all of this be necessary? Are we going to go back into short sales or not? Are we going to see a lot of foreclosures or not? The answer is I don't know. I don't know. Everything is changing day by day, hour by hour, and so your guess is as good as mine. And it's best for us to be prepared for it, first of all. And second of all, how do we take advantage of helping our clients so that they can keep their house? And also, why does that benefit us to have them keep their house, right? So we're going to cover all of that, and then we're going to go over what a short sale is and the foreclosure process and all of that in a little depth. So here is what we're going to learn. So what options are available to homeowners that might be seeking hard times to pay their mortgage? What does this process even look like? What are they doing? Who are they calling? How long does it take? Again, what's the benefit to us to help them towards keeping their house when we're in the sales business? And how can we be of best assistance to these people? What is, uh-oh, I've got a finicky mouse here. What is the process for the short sales? And or what is the foreclosure process? What does that even look like? If this market declines, what's a short sale and how does it work? And then how do we find these clients that are in need of our help besides the people in our sphere? Okay. Let me. All right. Oops. Okay, so we're on Zoom. What do I do? So I would really like this class to be interactive. I want your questions. I want to know what questions you have, what thoughts you have. So you can do a couple of different things. I will ask if you could keep yourself muted to avoid any unnecessary background noise. And then you can either unmute yourself to talk, you can raise your hand, or you can use the chat box. And please interact, ask questions. I want to make sure that, like, I know this, right? I did this for a really long time and was one of the top producers in the company doing so. So I know what I know, and I don't know what you guys don't know. So please ask questions. Let me know if I'm moving too fast, if you need clarification, whatever that looks like. Of course, I was a top producer. Yes, I not to be bragging, and I was. Like, I was in the top 3 all the time. Top 1, 2, 3. There were a couple of us that kind of bounced back and forth. It was fun, healthy competition. It was fun. Oh, thank you. All right. So, oh goodness. And this is a learning process for me too. Learning to teach on Zoom without the, energy of the room, sitting in one spot. The whole thing is new for me. So it's new. So I'm adapting as quickly as I can also. All right, so foreclosure. I mean, I'm sure you guys know what a foreclosure is. And it basically is, you don't pay your mortgage, the bank takes it back, right? I'm going to give you guys this PowerPoint after also. And I'll probably put it on Google Drive with a link so that it can be a living document as things change, because everything in that industry is changing just like it is in our industry now. So that way we can have a living, breathing document that is evolving as times change, as things evolve, and as we get more clarification on what's going on, what's the process. As I think most of you, if not all of you know, I used to work for Specialized Loan Servicing. I did this during the downturn of the market. I worked there for 5 years, and my job I was in the loss mitigation department. And at the very beginning of my job, I did both loan modifications and short sales. And then towards the end of the process, they broke us into groups, and I stayed on the short sale side. And then the loan modification people did their loan modification stuff. I had probably at any given time, anywhere between 200 and 400 loans I personally was responsible for in their loss mitigation process. And that's loan mods and short sales. When I moved strictly to short sales, then I think that we had about 200 files each. Well, maybe not each. I had a higher workload because I could handle more. And I would close anywhere between, when I was doing loan mods and short sales, 60 to 100 deals a month, sometimes up to maybe 125 a month. And then when I was on the short sale side, it was anywhere between 20 and 60 loans a month, the short sales that I would close. And it's a lengthy process. It's gotten better, and if we see influx like we did before, then it will be a lengthy process again. So I've reached out to some of my old coworkers at Specialized Loan Servicing that still work there in the loss mitigation department, whether on the loan mod side and the short sale side, and I said, catch me up. What's changed since I left? It's been 5 years now since I've done this, and not much has changed. Some of they call them waterfalls, some of the loan modification options have changed, not necessarily what options are available, how they get to the payment amount that they're getting, those have changed. So we'll go through that on the loan mod when we get to the loan mod stuff. And basically, we want to help our clients avoid foreclosure at all possible. Now, whether that's giving them the knowledge and the questions that they need to ask so that they can seek their own assistance and get their loan modified, to really preparing them that there are a lot of vultures out there and there's a ton of scams. I have a slide just on scams, and there's not much on it. It just says beware of scams, because I cannot tell you how many people I talked to that they said, these people were going to modify my loan, and I gave them $8,000. I gave them $10,000. I gave them everything I had, and I thought it was going to the mortgage, and then they disappeared. Same thing with the short sales. People would ask for money up front and in advance, and there's a lot of people that will take advantage of people in this situation. So I am a firm believer that even though I'm in the sales business and I sell short sales, and keep in mind that even when I worked at Specialized Loan Servicing, I was allowed to still practice real estate And short sales was a specialty of mine as well. I knew the process. I knew the bank side. I knew the consumer side. I would teach the agents remotely over the phone, because I was in a call center, how to list the house, get me an offer, get all the paperwork, get me in touch with title, get me a settlement statement. It was a HUD back then. And how to market the house. I would educate the borrowers. In our language, that would be sellers, right? We call them borrowers because they were the ones borrowing the money. Hold on, my daughter is, hold on. Sorry, daughter's cooking food, timer's ringing, dinging in the background. So I would teach the borrowers or the sellers how to find the real estate agent, how to vet them. And how to vet the borrowers, how to, or the realtors, how to find out exactly, do they even know what they're doing, or are they just kind of taking this? Are you giving this to friend because friend also has a job and just is going to give you a really cheap deal? So being that still goes on to this day in the real estate world on the servicer side, that they're educating these, this is how you will know that you're educated, so that the sellers can interview you and know that you're educated. So basically foreclosure, if they you don't pay your bill, they take back your house, right? Well, this is a legal proceeding. So we're going to talk about the time frame on that, all of that. Oh my goodness, there we go. Foreclosure process. So there are, in some states, judicial, it's a judicial state, and in some states they're non-judicial. Colorado is a non-judicial state. So basically that means that the process is a lot quicker and it's not quite as expensive. In Florida, for example, it could easily take 2 years to foreclose on a house. Same thing in New York, New Jersey. I don't remember any of the others. Those ones stand out to me because if you stopped the foreclosure process or the sale, it would have to start maybe completely over, or maybe back to the last major step that happened. So it got to the point that Florida's values weren't recovering like the rest of the United States was. And it's because they hadn't gotten all of their foreclosure sale houses out of inventory. So the judges started forcing sales. We have a question. Let's see. Nope. Is that Nebraska states? Northeast states. I would say east, northeast, and then I believe Georgia was judicial. It was about not quite half of the states were judicial states. I don't know if any of that's changed. I've been disconnected from that world, and we really don't need to know if, I mean, unless you're going to start like a short sale negotiation company, then you need to know each state laws. In Colorado, we're not. The foreclosure process can happen as quickly as, I put 6 months. What that means is not 6 months from the time it's referred to foreclosure. What that means is 6 months from the date of delinquency. So it really can happen in 4 months because they'll refer it after 45 days to 60 days to foreclosure. So the borrower will go into default. Default is considered after 30 days delinquency. So you have the late payment, usually 5% of the loan, not always, it depends on the note, will get added at the 15th, actually on the 16th. It's technically after the 16th. I always told everybody the 15th just because that gave them an extra day for their payment to post. It's after 15 days of delinquency is most loans. And since it's due on the 1st, 15 days after is the 16th. So on the 17th, you get your late fee, 5%. That can add up. You know, we're talking, if it is a, put my calculator here, if this is a, you know, $400,000 loan and the payment, we'll just say is $2,000. It's $100 for a late payment. So you're getting your late payment, and then after the last day of the month, if your payment's not made, then that's when everything starts. Most servicers will not allow you to make partial payments. They want you to pay in full, or they won't accept anything. And the reason being, if they accept something, then they're not going to be able to move it forward in the process. Now, a notice of default is sent to the client. That is a breach letter. You'll also hear it be called. They send that as quickly as 45 days after the loan is delinquent. Sometimes they'll send it at 30 days. That usually gets auto-mailed at 45 days. And it says, we need this much money in order to, or we're not going to take anything, and then we're going to move you over into the foreclosure process. At day 45, fees start accruing on the account, and they accrue pretty quickly. I have another slide that kind of goes over some of those fees. The borrowers need to know as soon as they're delinquent, which is past 30 days, and that's when negative credit reporting starts, then fees will start accruing very quickly. With the, something else that will, and I didn't put this in here, something else that will be a benefit to your clients is that sometimes they think that they can't make their payment because they've passed the late day. They can. They will have negative credit reporting after 30 days delinquent, so anytime in that month, and you can actually make your payment without the late payment. So you could save them $100 by telling them that. It will just stay on the account. It doesn't get reported as delinquent. It's your payment is what needs to be made, not plus the late payment. Now, that is something to be aware of when you are talking to the bank, if you're doing a short sale or if you're helping someone with a loan modification or something like that. I don't know that you should be helping someone with a loan modification, other than giving them the questions to ask. However, if you end up in that conversation, you can tell them, just make your payment without the late payment. The late payment will get taken care of when you sell the house, pay off the loan, whatever. Do your alternatives to foreclosure, whatever. After 90 days, it's referred to a foreclosure attorney. That is pretty typical. It can be referred any time after the 90 days. It could be referred to foreclosure sooner if they keep re-breaching, is what we call it. So there will be people that would go delinquent 45 days. They'd come up with their chunk of money, they'd pay that, and they're still delinquent though, because they still owe for this month. And so they continue this cycle. So if they've already sent out a breach letter or a notice of default letter, then they can use that one. So it could be not quite as delinquent as 90 days. It's usually about 90 days though. Most servicers start that process over again just because the system does it for them. Not all of them though. If you have a servicer or investor that has a small portfolio, they may execute that quicker. Yeah, so foreclosure attorneys are the ones that basically take care of everything that says you didn't pay your bill in your deed. Note deed, all the paperwork that's filed that says, if you don't follow these guidelines, then we'll be able to take back our house. So it's their house, it's not your house. You just live there until it's paid for, it's not your house, right? So they're the ones that make sure that everything gets done, that it gets done in the timelines that it needs to get done. And as we all know, attorneys are not cheap. So with the fact that attorneys are not cheap, those fees can add up very, very quickly. And I mean, it gets expensive quickly. So keeping it out of the attorney's hands is the best bet for everyone, no matter which way they're going. So what options are available to avoid foreclosure? We have loan modifications, we have repayment plans, we have short sales, we have deed in lieu of foreclosure. They could file bankruptcy. This could be a Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. The courts decide which ones you file. I mean, you get a file, whichever one you want. The courts will tell you at the end which one you're doing, though. 7 is all of your debt is erased. 13 is you're on a repayment plan. And then obviously you can do a full payoff of the loan. With the full payoff, sometimes you'll be helping someone that's delinquent and they still have equity. So our job as realtors is to not let it go far enough in the process so that they're not accruing more fees and losing the money that was going to go in their pocket to fees. I mean, it gets expensive, and it gets expensive quick. So here's some of the costs associated with the loan servicers. Now, I don't want you quoting these costs to anyone because every loan servicer is different. By loan servicer, that means the bank, okay? The person you write, if you were to write a check or you pay online to, that's who you're paying. That's your loan servicer. Most people think that, you know, if you pay Chase or whoever you're paying, that's who owns the loan, and that's not true. So you could be paying Bank of America. Well, they have pools of investors that actually hold these notes, and it's usually in a portfolio. They say all of these loans are like, you know, they all have 20% down, 30-year mortgages, interest rates in between X and X, sell it as a pool. And then a pool of investors are like, okay, yes, we'll buy those ones. Some of them have high risk loans. Some of them have less risk loans. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac may be the investor on your loan. And you would never know because you're paying Chase or PHH or Specialized Loan Servicing or whoever. And they're basically the investors paying that company to make sure that they're getting paid, that the payments are being applied, the escrow checks are getting cut, all of that. Which actually, I'm adding negative escrows here. So the costs, and so again, don't quote these costs because first of all, it's on old information. I wasn't going to ask my buddies that work at SLS, what are you charging now for BPO? What are you charging now for a property inspection, right? I just wanted to know what's changed. So this is what it was when I did this 5 years ago with SLS. Again, depending on the investor. If it was Morgan Stanley that had it, their fees were a little higher. If it was Bank of America, their fees were a little lower. So this is just kind of a ballpark, so you know. So property inspections are done as soon as you're 45 days delinquent, and then every 30 days after. What they're doing at a property inspection is someone will come to your house. I'll probably leave a little sticky on your door that says that they were there, and they're checking to make sure that the property is occupied, that the property is being taken care of, that the property is not abandoned. If it is abandoned, then what's next? You know, do they need to winterize the property? Do they obviously change the lock, secure the property, all of that. I find a lot of times people feel like if they quit paying their mortgage, then they feel like they need to vacate the house, and that is not true. In it actually is that servicers would prefer you to stay in the house because then they know the property's not at risk for vandalism, theft, squatters, all of that. So people will be like, oh, I quit paying my mortgage. And then they move and go rent something. And they're just like, I don't even know what to do. Tell them it's okay if they stay in that house. And in fact, they should talk to their loan servicer. In fact, the servicer would prefer them to be there just to take care of the house. You know, if things are empty, not only are they at higher risk for everything I just said, the vandalism, all of that, rodents, I mean, you get, things just start deteriorating if they're left empty and alone. You know, I don't know if any of you have like vacation properties or something. When you go up there, it kind of has a funk smell to it. Usually you have to open up the windows, uncover dust, you know, it just kind of, it gets dingy when it's not being upkept. Grass grows long. Now, that's also another thing to say is that if the loan servicer feels like something needs to be done in these houses, then they'll order it, and guess who's paying for it? The borrower, i.e. seller. So the lawn needs to be mowed. The back fence fell into the neighbor's house. A tree fell over, trees need to be trimmed. The house needs to be winterized. They're going to maintain that property and that asset the best of their ability. By they, I mean the loan servicer / property inspectors will tell the loan servicer, the bank, what needs to be done, and then the bank gets quotes and approves the cost. All of that's being charged back to the loan. So if they vacate that property, those costs go up exponentially and very, very quickly. Also, BPOs or exterior appraisals, it depends on, again, the loan servicer. An exterior appraisal is just like we were talking about in stand-up. That's when someone just drives by the house and does an appraisal, like a full appraisal without going in the house. A BPO is a broker priced opinion, and that is where an agent, you or I, would be in contact with these servicers, and they would say, we need to know the value of this address. And then you go out and you maybe tour the property, maybe not. It depends on if you have access to the property, how compliant the borrowers are, which if they're delinquent usually isn't a lot. They're usually not compliant. They're not gonna let some stranger come in their house. So there's exterior BPOs and there's interior BPOs, and then it's basically comps in a more of an appraisal format. So it's not as thorough as an appraisal. You don't need a license to do it other than being an agent. And should we ever get to where short sales and foreclosures and all of that are rampant, it might be another good source of second income for you. The bank charges between 180 and 225 each. Exterior BPO, interior BPOs usually run 50, 75 bucks more. Of course, you don't see all of that. You'll probably get 150, 180 for the BPO, which can, you know, do a couple of those a day, and that's a little bit extra money, right? Ooh, we have a question. If we do BPOs, do we still owe KW a split? That's a good question. And I did not work for Keller Williams when that happened. I don't see that being a regular commission check, and I'll find out.
We do.
Oh, Donna said we do?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I was saying in addition to the
You can
split that
unmute
you owe the
yourself, you're
bank.
muted.
Oh, I am muted?
Do you not know how? You can, oh, now you, okay, go ahead.
Is it muted?
I'm not hearing you. All right, go ahead and just type. I don't know. Let me see if I need to do something here. I don't think so. I can sing some on hold music for us while we wait. Just kidding. All right, sorry, I was just making a comment because there's still a split owed and the fee were left up at the ends being nominal. Yeah, I don't know. I know that Christina used to do, my MAPS coach, used to have a BPO business, and that was a good source of some of her income. She had a whole loss mitigation department where they negotiated short sales, not just for loans that they were selling, for anyone all around. And then she also had a BPO company. And so I don't know if that fell under that or not. I figure if we're at that point that we're picking up BPOs, we may not even care about the split. Yeah, no, because again, it will be nominal. And yeah, I'll find out though, for sure. I don't have the answer. I don't know. Okay, so we have our BPOs. So there's interior BPOs, exterior BPOs. BPOs, broker priced opinion. It's an agent that's doing this. And then there's appraisals. Bank of America always required appraisals. They'd be exterior appraisals, so it had to be done by a licensed appraiser. If it was just for delinquency, if it was for the short sale, they would require interior appraisals, like full appraisals. So those costs get added onto the loan. Obviously, the costs for the foreclosure attorneys, any, oh my goodness. I'm going to put property maintenance in here too. And then any costs associated with maintaining the property, anything like that, and then negative escrows. So taxes and insurance are still getting paid. It is in the borrower's best interest, the borrower, seller, owner, whatever you want to call them, it is in their best interest to keep their insurance that they have on the property. If they get, let's say they get a DUI and their insurance company drops them, find your own insurance, because otherwise they add lender placed insurance on there. It is 3 times as much and it covers structure only, no contents, no anything else. It's very expensive, and it can, like I said, it's about 3, when I worked there, I don't know if this is still the case, it may be more, maybe a little less. At that time, it was 3 times more expensive for a fraction of the insurance. It covered if the building burnt down, the building, that's it. So it is in the borrower's best interest, live there or not, maintain that insurance policy so that the costs don't go up. Even if you're not paying the bill, the bank is paying the bill. Same with taxes. Obviously, tax liens supersede first mortgages. So they will pay those bills and charge it back to the loan, which is why you can see how fees can very, very quickly become out of control. Any questions so far? All right, I'm moving forward. Now, bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is not really an alternative to foreclosure. However, I did want to cover it because it changes everything. If you file for bankruptcy, everything gets put on hold, all of it. Your options become very limited. The court has to approve anything, whether you're keeping the house, selling the house, whatever. In fact, the bank actually may order you to sell your house in order for you to pay off other outstanding debts if you file bankruptcy. So everything needs to go through the courts, which not only increases the cost for the seller, borrower, owner, because they have to pay their own bankruptcy attorneys and the bankruptcy filings and all of that. It also increases the costs if they are delinquent on their mortgage on that side, because now we need new attorneys to go through and make sure all of these options are approved. So we have to have our attorneys, or I say our, like I still do this. They would have to have their attorneys go through everything and make sure that everything's legal, and then send it to the other attorneys, and then the other attorneys, you know, every time they talk, it's probably $100, right? And then a judge has to sign off on it. So it really, really can mess up a deal if you are in the middle of it and they file bankruptcy. So whether you are doing a full payoff, if you're selling their house, a short sale, a full payoff, no matter what that looks like, tell them before they file bankruptcy, or if they're even considering it, to let you know immediately so that you can talk to them about what that looks like and how that changes things. It will stop a foreclosure process. It will. Foreclosure could be today. I filed bankruptcy today. Foreclosure sale's not happening today. And I've seen people file bankruptcy to stop foreclosure sales, and then the bankruptcy got discharged, and then they'd file bankruptcy and the bankruptcy would get, or not discharged, excuse me, dismissed. So they were in a cycle and a pattern of filing bankruptcy just to keep the house longer. And then they got pressed with legal charges because they were basically playing the system. I trust that none of us are going to be working with people that are doing that as a strategy to keep their house. And I want you to know that it still is something that we need to be mindful of. If you file bankruptcy, it changes everything, and it creates a lot more work for everyone involved. Borrowers, real estate agents, the servicer, everyone. So just have the conversation with them. All right, so another option is deed in lieu of foreclosure. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because basically it's not anything that you or I will likely see. The deed in lieu of foreclosure is basically I'm signing the house back without going through the foreclosure process, or at least the foreclosure sale. And I'm just saying, take the house back. Here, I'm giving it to you back. You know, most people think if they leave the house, then it's the bank's. That's not the way it works. The bank still has to go through all of these legal proceedings for them to legally own the house and take possession of it. So this is me signing, saying, hey, you don't have to do that whole foreclosure process. Here's the house, you know? So the bank, again, like it says here, the bank will only approve a deed in lieu of foreclosure typically if there aren't any other liens on the property. So no second mortgages, no IRS liens, no mechanics liens, no personal judgments, things like that. And I will tell you, when people get in a hardship situation, usually the first thing they stop paying is their mortgage because it's the biggest bill. And then if need be, they keep their lights on, they keep their electricity, they'll keep their cell phone and internet, they'll keep their YouTube, and they quit paying everything else. So it is not uncommon for extra liens to be on this house. The way I looked at it when I was negotiating short sales is if they quit paying me, being the bank, me, right, then they probably quit paying everyone else that they could. You know, their cell phone will get shut off, their power will get shut off. That's why they continue to pay that. They're not paying credit cards, they're not paying medical bills, they're not paying this, that, or the other. And then all of those people attach everything that they can to the house because it's an asset that usually isn't upside down, could be upside down. And the fee is nominal to do so. Another question. Yeah, we'll talk about the difference on credit reporting. Here, I don't have a slide for it, and it is part of the plan. A deed in lieu of foreclosure, any alternative to foreclosure, I'll say it that way. Any alternative to foreclosure will look better on your credit than foreclosure, right? And they all still do affect your credit. that's not something that you'll necessarily want to tell people. I don't think I got my drink. That's not necessarily something that you'll want to tell people, like how it affects their credit or not. It's in the list of questions that I've given at the end here for you to have them ask their loan servicer, their mortgage company is what they'll call them, whatever. And they also should be prepared for the fact that the loan servicer still may not answer that question other than saying, yes, it will affect your credit. I mean, they're taught to be as thorough giving information and also as vague as possible with certain things because they don't know and they don't want that extra liability. All right, here's my beware of scams. There's a lot of people in this world that take advantage of people with NEDs. So that's a notice of election of default. So it's a notice of default is what the bank sends. That notice of election in demand is what the county will send out. County, city, government agency, whoever it is that's starting the foreclosure process. The attorneys notify city, county attorney, whatever. And then they send out the notice of election in demand. And they also start making this public. So as soon as there is a notice of election in demand, there are certain, I believe it's still in Colorado. I don't know that they've changed it. Your name will get published in the newspaper saying so-and-so owes this much. If they don't pay, then this was what's going to happen to the property, because they have to give legal notice to the property owner and all interested parties. And back in the day, people read newspapers, so they'd put it on the newspaper. There's websites that you can get this. All of the counties have it. They have their own. Title companies will publish it. You can Google them, and there's, do you want a foreclosure list or whatever? So they make it public because if anyone else has interest in that property, whether or not, I mean, they may not be upside down. They just have interest in the property. They own it. That's how they're alerting the public or that party that something is happening. More questions? All right. There's one paper that takes all the NEDs. We used to subscribe to it. There is, I mean, the resources to get the NED list is crazy because you can get from title companies, you can get from the paper, you can get it from, some people give it to for free. You can go on each county and get them for free. Some of them, they'll give it to you, you know, they'll charge you $10 a month for all of the counties in the whole state or whatever. So, they'll also take advantage, okay. You know, people take advantage of elderly, stuff like that. They do not need to pay someone to do this, to do a loss mitigation option, an alternative to foreclosure. And if someone is asking them to pay for the service to help them out, they should call HOPE. HOPE is a nonprofit organization that gives people assistance and guidance through this. And so I have that phone number on the last slide. So what's a loan modification? So loan modification is a change to the term by the existing loan by the lender, by the mortgage company. So sometimes it's a reduction in interest rate. Sometimes they extend the length of the time that, you know, instead of a 30-year, it could be 35-year, 40-year. Usually 40-year is what you'll see, 480 months. Sometimes they'll give you a little bit longer to pay, or so there's lots of different ways, and that's what the waterfall was. So waterfall is how do they get to the payment or DTI that they're seeking. First thing they do is extend the term. they want to protect the interest rate because the interest rate's how they make money, right? The investor makes money. So they'll extend it out to 480 months. Then they'll take part of it and they'll defer it. So you could have a 40-year loan and a balloon at the end of that. And then they'll drop the interest rate, and then they, you know, start doing some other things. Maybe they stair step it. I mean, there's lots of different ways that they can do it. That's typically the way that most servicers go, though. Extend out the term, lower the rate, and then once you hit your target payment, because they're trying to get a DTI or a lower payment amount. According to one of my buddies, he said that, forget if it was Freddie or if it's Fannie, if their payments even lowered by a penny, they're approved. And it's the same thing, extend out the term, lower the interest rate, and then once they get that, then they're good. So a loan modification, everybody's like, oh, just throw the payments that I owe at the end. Doesn't really work like that. It also does affect your credit, only because most servicers require you to be delinquent to apply for help. That's kind of changed. You don't actually have to be delinquent. However, you very likely won't be approved if you're not. So something to know. And also not something to advise someone to go delinquent on their loan, because you don't want that liability, right? Does a loan modification reflect any way on your credit? Yes, it does. First of all, it will report negative. And then second of all, it will say loan modified on the credit report, depending on how the servicer reports to credit and if they're reporting that data. All the data points that loan servicers, mortgage companies, whatever, report to credit, it costs them. And it's usually a bundle deal, so they just pay to report everything. So usually they will report a loan modification, not always though. I would say the biggest hit to your credit is the fact that you become delinquent. So every 30 days, you're being reported 30 days late, 60 days late, 90 days late, 120 days. Or if you can keep it a rolling 30, you know, you're making last month's payment this month. If they'll even accept that, they may want both payments, and they have the right to do that. You're welcome. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily a negative if you get a loan modification. If you weren't delinquent, it will report that one happened. That's not necessarily a negative thing. It's the delinquency that hurts you. So what do you need to know from here? Every servicer, every investor, they all have different options. Just because your friend got X, Y, or Z doesn't mean that you'll get X, Y, or Z. Or, you know, like it literally is, even though I worked for specialized loan servicing, I had, you know, probably 100 different investor pools, and they all had different ways to get to their target payment. They all had different options that were available. They all had different everything. I mean, it was all different. So, and programs come and go. Like what is here today may not be here tomorrow, just like loans. You know, what was here today wasn't available yesterday. You applied on the right day, you get this extra whatever we have, right? And they all have their own special set of rules of what you need to, where you need to be in order to apply for a loan modification. Some require you're delinquent. CFPB changed to that they weren't allowed to require you to be delinquent to look for it. And if you were current, we'd be like, well, you're doing it, deny. You know, if you're proving to them that you can do it, then we weren't going to modify it. And that's just the way it was. And so we would say denied because you have the ability to pay. You've proven to us that you have the ability to pay. all servicers, this changed probably about a year before I got out of it. So about 6 years ago, CFPB came in and said, you must give people a decision within 30 days. Understand that whether it's a loan mod, a deed in lieu, a short sale, a denial is an answer. So if I deny your short sale today, tomorrow, I have 30 more days, you know, so it's not the answer people want to hear, and it is. So these can be lengthy processes. What's going on right now with assistance? At least with SLS, everything's business as normal. The government has not said we're doing this, we're implementing that. Everything is also changing day to day, hour for hour for them. So what's available right now or wasn't available yesterday, maybe today, you know, it's changing. There are no directives from anyone that they have to help, that they have to offer a deferral, that they have to do anything other than if someone applies for assistance, they must give an answer in 30 days. That's it. So the different types of loan modifications, just again, so you guys have a high level understanding. There's a forbearance. A forbearance is negative credit impacting most of the time. It's basically like a stop on your loan. So if I have a 3-month forbearance because I lost my job, then I don't have to pay the next 3 months. However, it is still reporting to my credit that I'm 30 days late, 60 days late, 90 days late. At the end of the forbearance period, I must repay all of it. So this may work for someone that has a, you know, was a contract job and they're waiting for a vendor to pay them. And they're like, I have no money right now. I'm expecting this check. I'm expecting a settlement. We're realtors. We're expecting commission checks, right? So this may work for someone like you or I, or I get a bonus in 90 days. All it does is stop the payments being owed and the foreclosure process from it being referred to foreclosure and the NEDs and notice of defaults, breach letters, all of that from going out, because there's an arrangement there. At the end of the 90 days or 120 days or whatever that forbearance period is, 6 months. I have not seen it over 120 days. We did have the ability to go up to 6 months. It was a reevaluate after 90 days. And then every 30 days after that, it was a reevaluate. So after that, then you have to either pay it in full, modify the loan, or pay the arrears in full or pay off the loan. So this could be a forbearance that's saying, I can't make these payments. I'm putting my house on the market. I have equity. I don't want all these extra costs accruing and negatively affecting how much I'll get to keep in my pocket because I know I have equity. It's a pause button. Give me 90 days to sell my house, you know, and then I better be moving on my side to make sure that I get my house listed, price it right, get an offer, pick the right realtor, all of that. So that's a forbearance. A repayment plan is just that. Let's say you're behind 2 months or have 2 payments due, so you're behind 30 days and then the next month's due. They'll take however many of your payments. I was out of work and now I'm working again. They'll take, let's say, $2,000 a month is my mortgage payment to keep math easy. So I owe $4,000. So I pay $1,000 extra a month for 3 months. On a repayment plan, usually you'll still get your property inspections at the very least. They'll usually hold off on BPOs. Not always though. So that's just something to be aware of. A disaster modification. Now this one's interesting. A disaster modification is usually when FEMA comes in and says, there's been a tornado, there's been a hurricane, there's been a flood, there's been a something that has affected the entire area. So that usually ends up being a true deferral. I have loan deferrals at the bottom with question marks because there's not really like, you can defer a car payment usually. They don't do that with mortgages. Not in my experience, and the couple of servicers that the people that I talked to and then the couple of servicers that I looked up and did some research on, they don't have it. That's what everyone wants. They're like, oh, I'm back to work. Just throw what I haven't paid plus the fees at the end of the loan, and then I just pick up and move from here. Sorry, it's not that easy. So with the exception of a disaster modification. Now, speculation is calling for the fact that they will offer state by state, county by county, maybe even the entire United States, disaster modifications, like will all be like the United States could be declared a disaster area, and then these disaster mods would come out. They are very specific for the area and what is offered. So when they had the floods up in like Longmont, Boulder area, wherever that was up north, they said everybody in this part, and it literally went by addresses almost. I mean, it was by streets. This part gets 6 months disaster mod. They're not paying anything. We're not referring them to foreclosure. This part over here, they only get 3 months. This part down here, they get 1 month. So it varies, and it can vary greatly on what relief is provided. So just know that unless everything is a disaster, you really need to have like usually it's a natural disaster, earthquakes, hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, something pretty major that impacts a lot of people. I would say that what we're living through right now is pretty major and impacts a lot of people, and they still have not said anything yet about disaster mods. And sometimes that also can vary by type of disaster and the servicer. So the FEMA may say you get 6 months, while the investor may say we'll give them 9. You know, let's help them out. So it just depends. There usually is a minimum that the servicer is required to give, though. Traditional loan modification, we just talked about that. So that is where terms are extended, interest rates are decreased. Sometimes there's a deferral, so they'll take $400,000 house, they'll take $100,000, throw it at the back of the loan. So you have a 40-year loan with a $100,000 balloon. And that's why I was so successful on the short sale side, and why they kept me on short sales, is because I would talk to these people. I'm like, do you really understand what you're doing here? Do you understand that you have a 4.25% interest rate, which was still lower than it was at the time, that you're paying for 40 years from, you know, your first payment, you're paying for 40 years, and then you have a balloon at the end? Do you really want to owe $100,000 of money that's due on month 480 after you've been paying 40 years for a house? And people don't understand it, and they don't understand what they're actually getting into. So if any one of your clients is talking about loan modification, help them understand what's actually happening with that loan modification. I'm more than happy to help you look over the mod paperwork. The servicer should be explaining it, and it very likely, I can tell you, 90% of loans get an extension on term before anything else happens. Some of them will get an extension on term and a deferral. Now that money's not collecting interest if it's deferred, right? Before they're lowering the interest rate, because they're going to get that money on the interest, because the way that the amortization schedule works is it's front loaded with interest. So they're getting their money's worth out of that loan by keeping that interest rate as high as possible. So I'll extend it out 480 months, so 40 years. I'll have a balloon of $100,000 at the end, and I'm still getting my, 4.5% interest rate. So any payments that they do make, it's just more money in my pocket because very little is going to principal. So they just really need to be educated about how loans work, how they are front loaded with negative or amortization. We don't really have option loans or anything like that anymore where they're negatively amortizing themselves. All of the fees are just kind of rolled in, and then they take the principal balance plus the arrears, all of the uncollected interest, plus all the fees. They roll it in, they do a new amortization schedule, push out the term, defer, drop the interest rate, and then, you know, get them to a DTI payment that usually is still so much. Most of them go up to 55% debt to income ratio gross. So when you figure what that is on net, at least 30% goes to the IRS, right? So now you have 20%, hold on, you got 80, so you're at 70%, you're at 50, you have 15% to pay your bills and live on. Is that enough? Probably not, right? Let's protect the asset, let's sell it, let's get you as much money out of it as you can, or get it off over from looming. People get very attached to their houses, especially if they've raised families in them, and bringing them back into this is an investment and you're not doing any investing for your future. Those conversations are real and they need to be had. So yeah, that's getting people to detach emotionally from a piece of property. Just say, wouldn't it be so nice if you could just move? The memories will stay, right? Then, yeah. So those are conversations that you can plan on having, whether you're helping, you know, talking to them about a loan modification, seeing if that loan modification makes sense in the end, or if they should just sell the house, whether they're going to sell it and do a full payoff and be able to keep equity and keep as much equity as possible, or whether or not they are, whether or not they should sell the house and maybe it is short and just be done with that chapter of their life and move on and start a new one. And one thing to know about loan modifications is that very unlikely they're going to do anything unless you're getting paid. So if you just got laid off, you're denied because you don't have income. Sorry, too bad, so sad, right? As awful as that sounds, they have to be able to still justify that you can afford that payment. Now there's ways around it. If people live in the house with you, they'll take, I'm not on my loan, on my house, I'm on the title, not the loan, because I hadn't been self-employed with the income that I needed to show for the 2 years when we refinanced last. And so I could be a contributor to the household and say, I pay X amount of dollars, blah, blah, blah. And then I still have to prove all my income, bank statements, taxes, all of that. And my husband would, you know, let's just say took a pay cut. So then they would take that into consideration if he didn't make enough. I would tell them don't use a contributor unless they're denied because they don't have the ability to afford it. Then start bringing in contributors, because all you're doing then is setting yourself up for a higher payment. And you can always pay more. You can't pay less, right? All right, short sales, the fun part. Hold on one second. Okay, short sales. So what is a short sale? It is the amount that you owe. It's when you owe the bank more than you'll get out of the house. Now, in 08, 9, 10, 11, 12, that was really just because the market tanked, right? Well, it could be because the market's gone down. It could be because maybe they bought at a high point and the market's just kind of leveled off, so they want to sell it, accept title fees and taxes and realtor costs and inspection items and everything else that happens during the transaction that costs money for people to sell. They're just negative that amount. So the options with that is they can either bring the the cash to closing if they have it. So let's say they're $15,000 from being, they're able to pay off their loan. They're only $15,000 short with the equity that they still had, you know, they're $15,000 short with agent fees and all of that. So you can work out a deal with commissions on that. You can, which isn't my favorite, you can still ask the bank for a short sale and say, you know, the net to pay off this house is 400. It will really cost them 415,000 to sell the house, and see if they're willing to do anything to help with that. So it can just be fees that they're short on. Hopefully they have money and they can just bring it to closing and it's fine. It's not always the case. So the short sale process, whole overview. So the very first thing before you do anything is pull an O&E. You really, really need to see what you're taking on. If you're taking on a short sale, even if they're close. I personally, and maybe this is just because I lived through that era, and I want to see what's on the loans. Borrowers don't tell you a lot. They really don't. Buyers are liars. Someone that is in a situation that they're possibly short, or maybe they know that they are short, or they're a lot short, or whatever, they very likely will not, they're not paying other creditors and they're embarrassed to tell you. You know, that's not a situation that anyone wants to be in. And it's definitely not a situation that anyone wants to talk about. You know, like, I don't want to tell someone that I'm not able to pay my bills and then I haven't paid these people. And some of it, they're not even opening their mail to see what's going on, because out of sight, out of mind. So pull an O&E, see what liens and judgments are on the house. I always figured if someone quit paying something, then they quit paying everything. And you really need to know what you're taking on. Are you taking on a first mortgage? Are you taking on a first mortgage and a second mortgage? Are you taking on the IRS? Does the IRS have a lien on their house? Does the county have a lien on their house with water or sewer? Do any creditors? Are there mechanics liens? I mean, and you have to negotiate with everyone. The HOA, did they quit paying the HOA? I have a whole slide for HOAs because HOA is the superior lien state. So that is a first lien. It trumps the first lien in the state of Colorado. And they get brutal and nasty with their fees. Like, I would pay the HOA if I had one. Goodness, I don't. And if I did, I would pay them before I'd buy food. I'm not kidding. I would pay them before my electricity is being kept on. Because those fees are outrageous. And once they're on you, they're on you for everything. They're finding you for trees and grass and this and that and paint, and you can't afford to do it, or you'd be doing it. You can't even afford to keep your house, right? And it is crazy. Each letter could be $500. I've seen it, and it's outrageous. It is completely outrageous. So know what you're getting into and what you're willing to take on and tackle before you get that listing agreement signed. There's always ways around it. There's negotiation companies. I assume they still exist. There used to be back in the day. And they would negotiate everything for you, and you pay them a flat fee of $1,500 worth every penny, right? I did all my own negotiation because I knew I was a better negotiator than them. It's what I did. And if the IRS had a lien on there, yeah, might have thought twice about it, you know? And how cooperative is the borrower, the seller? Are they willing to give you all of the paperwork that you need? Because they will be giving you a lot of paperwork, and they'll be giving you some very personal and sensitive information. Bank statements, paycheck stubs, tax statements, hardship letters, I mean, all of it. So after you pull the ONE and you get the listing agreement and all of that, you list the house, you get the offer in, and then you have to call your title company. Your title company will give you a settlement statement just like you get a closing, and it will tell you all of the costs associated with the sale of the house. It could be on a net sheet, except for they won't accept net sheets. They want a settlement statement from the title company because they want it to be very accurate. Always have the title company push the fees out as if it's 4 months later. And you do that so that you give them a worst case, because the worst thing that you can do is say, well, we're set to close in 45 days. So put the closing at 45 days. And now they've pushed out those fees for 45 days. The bank took 30 days to get an answer and approval. And now we're starting the process. So now we're out. So now someone needs to bring cash to closing because the minimum net is what is approved. Or you have to go back through the whole process again and start over. Sometimes it's starting over with all of the paperwork. Sometimes it's just from the settlement statement on. It just depends. Sometimes they have delegated authority and they can say anything above, if I'm getting a net of 90% value, then I'm good. The servicer can approve that on their own. Some investors want to see every single deal. And I was lucky enough to, because I was one of the top producers, I got stuck with those stupid investors that wanted to see every deal. And I truly had to sell that loss because they want every penny that they can out of it, especially if this becomes a thing, a deal here or there, I get it. It happens. Even to this day, I still see short sales around, not many, and I've seen them. And if we get into a financial crisis and these become very rampant, they're watching every dollar, and they really are, especially the smaller investors. So I would have to tell them why we shouldn't take it to foreclosure and how much extra time and money and all of that it would take versus just taking the short sale and getting it off our books now and taking the loss up front, because we're taking a loss either way, right? So your title company will give you a settlement statement at the bottom where it normally says like cash to borrower, and then that's what the people are getting back, your sellers are getting, like right now, or what they're using towards their next house or whatever. That's a negative number, and that's normal. So it will say after, we're selling it for 400, there's $25,000 worth of costs. So we're getting 365. That's the net. The balance of the mortgage is 450. So then they can figure out what they're coming short, plus fees, plus uncollected interest, plus, all of it adds up and it's all counted for. The paperwork that you need for this, every servicer is different. It could be, they call it a request for mortgage assistance form, an RMA is what it's called for short. Request for mortgage assistance. That could be a short sale, it could be a mod. Sometimes that paperwork is universal. It doesn't matter if they're applying for a mod or a short sale, it's the same paperwork. Sometimes they have a request for mortgage assistance form for a loan modification, for a deed in lieu of foreclosure, for a repayment plan, for a short sale. So make sure that you're having the borrowers fill out the right paperwork, that you are getting. There's a list of things that you have to give. RMA, a Dodd-Frank, a 4506T, 2 months of bank statements, 2 years of tax returns, a hardship letter, 30 days of paycheck stubs. And this is even if you're not keeping the house. Okay, they want to make sure that you don't have the ability to at least even repay them some of it. They can do that, right? So you're filling out all of this paperwork. Send the paperwork as the entire package all at once. Sometimes you can just upload it to a system and it's in there. Sometimes you must fax it in, believe it or not. We'll still use faxes. Sometimes you can email it over. It just depends on the loan servicer that you're working with. And also the security measures, because this is such sensitive and personal information. that that loan servicer has in place. So uploading it to the website is probably the most common, and not all of them have it, believe it or not. So make sure you know what paperwork you need, how to get it to them, and send the complete package all at once. Because if they're missing even one form, let's say a pay stub didn't come through, we deny it. We had to get an answer out within 30 days. Getting an RMA, the request for mortgage assistance form, was enough for us to have started the process. So if we don't get that paperwork, then we just deny you until we get the pay stub. And then a pay stub comes in, they're like, oh, well, actually, now we need to restart the process because that loan and that paperwork was denied. And it's crazy, and it sounds like a game, and it is super frustrating for both parties, right? So send everything all at once. Make sure that the packet is complete. I even put it in order that it needs to be put in order. And I go as far as to, on the request for mortgage assistance form, the 4506T, the Dodd-Frank, I would tell the borrower or the seller, the whatever you want to call them, homeowner, don't date. Sign, don't date. I'd make a copy so I'd have one that I could redate and then send it back through. Because and you can get into a cycle of paperwork where, oh, that pay stub is stale now. That one's too old. We need a new one. Oh, well, now we have this form, but now the RMA was signed more than 60 days ago, so now we need a new RMA. So if you just send it all at once as a complete packet, I promise you, your life will be easier. Otherwise, you get in a paperwork and something's expiring tomorrow and they didn't tell you about it. They may not have even known, who knows? So everything all at once, every single time. I don't care if they told me I need one pay stub, I would send an entire new packet. Just because I did it. I know what the game is. And a lot of these, the people that check the paperwork in are not in the country, you know, they're outsourced. So they're not, all they're doing is saying, oh, denied, this RMA is too old. Well, you didn't see the new one came in or whatever, you know, so I send everything all at once. Anytime you send them something, send everything all at once. That is my best practice for you. Follow up often. If they say, call us back in 5 days, call them in 3 or 4. Find out if you have an agent that you'll be working specifically with, or if you're just working with a call center full of people. Also start all of this process with first liens, second liens, HOAs, mechanics liens, IRS, anyone has a lien on this property, start the process at the same time with all of them. Getting these dates when there's a lot of everyone else synced up is very, very difficult. Also, it's very likely that, let's say you have a first mortgage, I'm just going to do easy math here. A first mortgage for 400, a second mortgage for 50, and you know, a mechanics lien for 10, a judgment for 10, and the IRS for 10. Or let's say inside of the IRS, because that gets complicated, let's say the HOA, 10,000. So the first lien, the first mortgager may say, we'll allow a certain percent up to a certain dollar amount. And you have to get those settlement agreements from all of these, from the HOA. Usually it's between $3,000 and $7,000. They usually go off of what's allowed by foreclosure, not always though. So if, even though it's a superior lien, there's still a max that the HOA can get. So I think that their goal is to get to that max as quickly as possible, so they're guaranteed that at sale. That's my own personal opinion. I don't know if it's true or not. I dealt with it a lot though. Second lien, they may say we authorize 15% or 10% of the principal balance, not the total amount due, the principal balance up to $6,000, $10,000. If it goes to foreclosure sale, and this is your negotiating strategy with all of the other subordinate liens, if this goes to foreclosure sale, you realize that we don't have to pay you anything. So do you want something now, or do you want nothing later? And it really requires you to be a little brutal sometimes in the negotiation of it. Because that's what would happen, with the exception of HOAs, because HOAs will always get the max allowed. I feel like it was $6,000 or $7,000 was the max allowable. I might be wrong though. Every state had a different amount, and I would have to do research. I feel like that was what it was though. And all of this can be found online at the various places, the foreclosure process. Go to foreclosure attorney's website, go to Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae guidelines. It's in there, how much they'll allow. In some instances, we were giving second liens $1,500, $3,000. We'd give you 6% up to a certain dollar amount. And 6% is not a lot, you know, that takes a hit. And that's why second liens interest rates are also more expensive, because there's a higher risk for them on taking a loss. So again, front load the interest, and you may need to remind them how much they've actually already made on this loan. If it was a 15-year second mortgage and they're 6 years in, well, you've already recouped all of that. So you're losing this much money, right, on paper. It's not really though, because you've been getting interest this whole time, and it's a higher interest rate. Another question. Oh yeah, this is what Gwen did, and she went and bought these second liens once they got the notice of election of the NEDs. She'd go buy the second liens, and then they would know that they weren't getting it, and they're pennies on the dollar is what they're sold for. So you probably made some pretty decent money on that, and some of them you might have made some money on. Some of them you didn't. Bank of America really didn't care for the most part. They're like, give them whatever, you know. Their Morgan Stanleys are like 6% up to $3,000. That's it, you know. Do they want anything? Because we will take it to sale, and they would take it to sale, you know. So that's that. We would work with the borrower, then bring the first current, get cash for keys, and save their credit. You know, cash for keys is another thing that I forgot to put in a slide. I meant to and forgot, and so we'll talk about that also, because if we're coming to a point that people are doing this, they're going to get cash for keys. Oh, and you were not licensed. I don't know that that there is a license to help someone. Right. Well, and you weren't selling it though. You were just bringing them current, right? You're getting unmute.
Okay, no, I was, my company would buy the, can you hear me?
What's going on? Hold on.
Can you hear me
try now?
Okay, so I was buying the second mortgage as my company, and then I was always in communication with the borrower. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then I would go back to the borrower, and now I'm knocking on their door saying, I'm your bank. Let's talk. And then they would tell me, you know, the whole big story, and we get to the pain, blah, blah, blah. And clearly this is a bunch. You just drive them to the realization that they're hosed.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to help them by getting them out of the house. And yes, I would sell the house. I did FSBO all the time, but that's how I and thought it was a good idea. But that's how long ago I met John Compton. So who used to be with our office and now is at Remax.
Okay.
But, yeah, so we met in 2002 and he listed one of our houses because that's what we were doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
should we come back to the short sales period? I have secret tricks on how to make it a little more worth your time.
awesome.
By placing it in certain sections of the settlement statement. So,
Okay. Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I just don't know that I can buy the note, but I have a business partner that might be able to do that kind of stuff still.
Because of lack of capital or because you're an agent?
Because I'm an agent.
Yeah, I don't know those rules.
Yeah, I don't know if it may be a difference of the DORA rules versus, I don't understand that, so I'm gonna say no. Which I see from time to time. You know, when you don't understand something, you tend to err on the side of caution and just
Right.
go, I just don't want you to do that because I don't want the liability in the office, which I
Right.
totally get as well. So I just need to figure out the workaround
Right.
if that ever comes back around.
Right.
And does that eliminate me being able to do it in other states? Because I'm not licensed there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh. I
We
don't
can
know.
take
We
that
had
offline,
people
I'm sure.
calling us. Yeah, we had people calling us up all the time. They're like, we want to buy the second. We'd say, nope.
Oh, I know. I called you all the time. I probably talked to you.
You probably did.
I bought for like 200 different investors
Okay.
across the
Yeah,
country.
SLS wouldn't sell their seconds.
Oh, I know. But I
Um,
call every 45 days just to see if you change your mind.
Yeah.
If we could get through to somebody.
Yeah. Yep. Wow. That's a whole
Yeah.
nother story.
Right, it is.
Yep. It's an interesting world out there. And we were so busy, and Bank of America at the time had they had required that the government required the Bank of America and Wells Fargo, who was bought by Chase, they had to service transfer so many of their loans. And so we were getting tons of Bank of America loans, and we couldn't onboard them fast enough. We couldn't work them fast enough. We couldn't do any of that fast enough. And we were slammed. I mean, there were times that they were trying to give us 400 or 500 loans at a time to work. And they're like, you have to be through all of these in 2 days. And we're like, what are you talking about? I have to review 400 loans every single day to see if someone's called in, to see if we have any more paperwork, to see if we have an offer, to see if, and then, you know, it was insane. And we got Bank of America loans, I kid you not, that were 9 years, 7 years, 9 years delinquent. Think about those fees. It was crazy.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Insane.
Some people know how to play that bankruptcy. We called it a game. It was a bankruptcy game.
Yeah, it totally. Well, and that's not even the reason. It was the Bank of America hadn't even referred it to foreclosure yet because they had so many loans that were delinquent, option arms, all these like crazy loans that they don't do anymore. And they hadn't even been referred to foreclosure yet. So they'd been living in their house for 7 years, and you'd be like, okay, well, what kind of money do you have that you can help contribute to this? And they're like, oh, I don't have anything. I mean, you better have a mattress full of money. No. And they didn't. And it was crazy. And then they get pissed that they're like, you're going to take me to foreclosure. I just want to pick back up payments. Not how it works, you know? And now I'm looking through your bank statements, and you're going to Starbucks every day, and you have a $600 a month car payment, and you're paying $300 a month for cell phones and this, that, and the other. And so how about you cut expenses? And then asking these people to pick up a mortgage payment that's, let's say it was HAMP or and it's 45% DTI instead of 55% DTI. So that's where it started, like 43%, 43 to 45% was about normal until things changed. And so you ask these people, 45% of your gross debt to income ratio is still 60% net, 65% net. You ask these people that for 7 years haven't made a mortgage payment to all of a sudden give them this huge mortgage payment that's a majority of their net income. And then they'd redefault, and then HAMP 2 went up to 55%. I mean, it was crazy. So I would be like, do you really understand that you're paying for 40 years, have a balloon at the end of 40 years, and you after 40 years still won't own your home. You know,
And you're
it
talking
doesn't
to
make sense.
somebody who spends so much money for their big, humongous TV, their
Right.
really nice cars out front, or their
Mhm.
beater cars with really nice spinny rims. I mean,
Right.
like, you're not talking to somebody who's being rational,
Right.
honestly.
Oh,
And it's
and I
harder to
raised,
kick somebody out of their house after they've bought it than it is their rental.
right. Well, and people get more emotionally attached to it also. Um, you know, you pretty much know if you don't pay your rent, you're going to get evicted in what, 2 months, maybe 3, you know, if you play the system a little bit. And a mortgage can go 6 months, 9 months is probably more realistic. 7 to 9 months is probably pretty average. It could happen as soon as 6 months. It's more like 7 to 9 months. And I mean, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. Um, People are not always rational, and so helping them realize what it is that they're actually doing in that loan modification and how it's not serving them, that their investment just became a huge liability. And that's the reason we buy houses, is for an investment. It can be a pretty difficult conversation. And in most instances, it requires you to be on the sales side. You have to be empathetic and compassionate and direct and honest at the same time. On the servicing side, I could say whatever thought came into my mind, as long as it wasn't like harassment or derogatory, I could say, you know. I could call them out on their bank statements and be like, dude, you got an $800 a month car payment, sell the car, you know, and I said it multiple times a day. And when you're earning business from someone, you have to have that care and empathy, and you still have to be direct, and you will have a lot of conversations that make you uncomfortable, and you just have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because it really is switching them out of emotion and into logic, because we all know emotion makes us act, logic makes us think, emotion makes us act, right? Well, it's the inverse of that. You have to get them out of emotional, I love my house, I raised my family here, I've put my life savings into this, I've drained my life savings trying to keep my house, into logic. This is no longer an asset. It's not serving you right now. Let's get you into an investment. And hopefully we're doing this on the front end with the clients. And most homeowners now have lived through the last dip, or they at least remember it. You know, their parents can tell them about it, their aunts, uncles, whatever. You know, if they didn't have it happen to them, then they can at least, they know someone who did. And so those conversations will likely be a little easier this go around if we reach that point, because sometimes it requires outside people telling you their experiences and helping you remember that the reason you did this was to gain money. Let's not spend life savings on keeping a house if you have no income coming in the near future. Let's get rid of house, you know, let's lower the liability. Maybe it's get rid of house before your credit's impacted and buy smaller house, right? It can be as easy as that. Or it could be rent for 6 months, and then buy a house. Get on your feet, get everything moving again, get caught up, get the weight off of your shoulders is indescribable, because it is very stressful when creditors are calling cell phone, you're changing your cell phone number or shutting off your phone or whatever. Like, it's very, very stressful. And just to have it done is so relieving. I mean, I saw it. I used to get thank you notes. I kid you not. People used to be like, thank you so much. I know I was a total a-hole at the beginning, and now I'm not, you know. Thank you so much for helping me realize that this was not a good investment. And they were the people that were screaming at me at the beginning. You know? So make sure you know what you're dealing with before you take on a client. Don't just take a listing to get a listing. It serves no one if that listing doesn't sell. It makes you look bad. And not saying that if your listings don't sell, you're going to look bad, right? However, if you want to mitigate your risk to helping that client as much as possible, because the referrals go away with that. It does a number on your numbers personally. You aren't going to get their referrals if that sign has been in that yard for a year and a half and no one's seeing it. Do you think the neighbors are going to use you? You know, and it's not always your fault. It could be that the IRS is not budging on that lien. It could be that the second mortgage won't play ball. They're saying, if you take it to sale, I'll get more. That's my math calculation. Good math or bad math? I don't know. And so although it may be no fault of your own, that's not what the general public sees. So just be careful, know what you're taking on, know how much risk you're taking on. I mean, I can't tell you how many agents I talk to. They're like, I'm making like 50 cents an hour now. By the time I'm calling you and calling them and doing this, and buyer comes in, buyer goes out, because every time you get a new buyer, the deal sticks with the buyer. So if buyer's gone because it took too long, they found something else, process starts over once you find a new buyer, you know, and that's not what's getting seen. And the borrowers may not understand it. Hopefully you'll be able to explain it to them. And although you might be able to explain it to them, they still may not understand. So know what you're getting into before you get into it. I love short sales. I like negotiating. I think that they're a blast. I loved that job. I truly did. I truly did. It was stressful and I still loved it. And if short sales come back, I will be all over them. I will tell you that much. I'll probably start a loss mitigation negotiation company because I know it, right? And I can train people to do that also. I'll tell you, I would think twice about taking that deal if the IRS was involved, depending on how many liens and judgments there were. So just know what you're getting into. And you can only do that if you pull an O&E. And maybe even look at the county. And I cannot tell you how many times, I kid you not, I would talk to someone and they were like, oh, well, I didn't know there was a second lien on the mortgage. We're supposed to close in like tomorrow or in a week or something. And they're like, a second lien popped up, a second mortgage popped up. No, it didn't just pop up. You didn't read the title work. You didn't pull an O&E. And are you kidding? Yeah, no, you didn't do your job. So don't be the one that the servicer's like, you obviously didn't do your job. I'll tell you that if you are, you're not getting any REO business, real estate owned business after it goes to foreclosure, if REO business becomes a business to be in again, you know. So know what you're getting into, make sure that you're making enough money to get it taken care of. All right, so these are questions to ask a short sale negotiator. Again, this will be on Google Drive, so you guys can take screenshots if you want. You don't have to. You'll have access to it. So these are questions. Now, the first phone call, you likely will not be an authorized third party. So that's where they sign saying, Angela Thompson's allowed to talk about my loan at this address, and they sign, and then they have to send it to the servicer, and then it takes like a week for the servicer to be able to see it. So the first phone call very likely will be, oh, well, you're not authorized on this loan, I can't talk to you. And then you can say, well, how about I just ask general questions about the process? So it's not loan specific, it's just general questions that have nothing to do with that one person. Then, you know, do you have an agent that I'll be assigned to that I'll be working with directly, or am I working with the general public? What paperwork's needed? Where do I get that? How long is this paperwork good for? What does this process look like on your side? How far delinquent? Well, now we're getting into questions that are loan specific. Ask as many of these that you can that aren't loan specific if you don't have authorization yet. How far delinquent are they? That is critical to know, because if they have not been referred to foreclosure yet, foreclosure attorney fees aren't adding up, only BPOs and property inspections. And if they're living in their house and there's no property maintenance, then we need to sell quick. Like, we don't want attorneys adding fees onto this account, because either that's less from their pocket if it would be a full payoff, or it's more of a loss, and now we're up against a clock, you know. How far delinquent are they? Have they been referred to foreclosure? How far in the foreclosure process they are, if they have been. What is the foreclosure process? I ask very general questions, even if I know, just to see if this is the agent I'm going to be working with on the loan, if this is my assigned agent, how much do they know? How much information are they willing to give me? How much help am I going to get from them? How much rapport can I build with them? You really want to make friends with these people, because if you're mean and nasty, I mean, it's not going to be good, you know. What are the costs and how often are they happening? So that's things like inspections, BPOs, is it interior, exterior BPOs? How often are they happening? Just so you can kind of get a running tally of what you're up against fee-wise as they come. Is there a net that I need to meet? You know, are you looking for work on percentages? Most of them will work on percentages. So, you know, how much am I allowed to pay the second lien holder? Is it 6%, 10%, 15%, 20%, whatever? What does your net need to be? If I get you 90% net to value, are you good? Or is it a dollar amount? What is it? You know, is there a point that you have delegated authority? Would be a great question that is not written on here. So is there a point that you have delegated authority? Bank of America, for example, as long as our net was 85% or greater. So what we were getting to value was 85% of value. We had delegated authority. Bank of America didn't even need to see it. If it was 90%, my manager didn't even need to see it. You know, I always shop for 92, 93% on my own deals. When I was negotiating whether or not I could get 83%. And I was a top producer still getting 92, 93%. There were people that were getting 85%, just pushing them through just to get an approval and a deal done and whatever. And I was still working to get the investor the most money, because I felt like that was my job. It was the right thing to do. That's what I was getting paid for. So ask them what net you need to meet. What kind of value will they be pulling? Are they going to be pulling a BPO, or are they going to get a full appraisal? Is it going to be an interior BPO? How far in advance do you order that? How long is that BPO good for? BPOs expire also. So that's part of the paperwork cycle. Okay, all my paperwork's good. I finally got a package. Now my BPO's expired. So now I got to order a new BPO. So now we're out 2 weeks. Oh crap. Now my RMA's expired. You know, lining everything up. Oh, we had second lien approval. Now that's expired. You know, lining everything up gets it's a game, really. So that's why sending everything all at once, every single time, you need one pay stub, you're getting my whole packet with a new date, you know? That's why that becomes so important. And staying on top of them doing their job. That's why, what does this process look like, is a good question, because now you know what their side looks like, and then you can keep them on track. Hey, when does our BPO expire? Do you think we need to order a new one? You know, hey, when does, whatever it is, how are we on timelines with everything? How long does it take for the investor to see it? Is our BPO going to expire during that time? Because it can. And depending on the investor, some of them, if it's in the approval process, or we would call it review process, because nothing's ever guaranteed to be approved, right? If it's in the review process, are they going to, does that date become, nothing can expire during that time, or can things still expire during that time? Depends on the investor, depends on the servicer. There's so many variables, even within one servicer, that you need to know their process as well as they know their process so that you can keep them on track. If the house is vacant, is it winterized? If it's not winterized, will it be winterized? What happens if we need to do a property inspection and we need it unwinterized? Some of our investors, there's no turning back on water. Sorry. If the buyer wanted to pay to have the house, unwinterized is just turn on the water, right? That's easy, but to have it re-winterized after, that was on the buyer. It was an expense of the buyer. There were some of our investors, it didn't matter. They weren't letting you do it. It didn't matter. Servicers, mortgage companies, whatever you want to call them, may cut your commission. So always try for the commission that you've agreed to, and know that it's a possibility that your commission might get cut. So it's a good idea to have in your contracts, if the mortgage company reduces my commission, buyer's agent's commission's going down too. We're splitting this reduction in pay. So find out what the allowable commission is up front. There are a ton of ways to still get things done on deals that make it allowable. So I could still get, let's say we don't have fixed rates here, right? I'm complying with, I'm just going to use 6% as an example, because that's not always our percentage. If 6% is my commission, we'll just call it 3 and 3 for easy math. And they cut me down to 5%. They say 5% max is allowable. Okay, well, I have a few options, right? I can do 2.5, 2.5. I could do 3, and then whatever the difference is on the buyer side. So they make a lot less, right? They're not going to want to do that. We could move some of the other percentage over to the buyer's side, and then the buyer's paying it. Same thing with judgments and other liens. Like if the IRS is not budging on their number, then if we can manipulate the ask price enough, then we can have the buyers pay for that, when really they're not paying more than the house is worth, right? They're just paying that lien. So there's a lot of different ways to move things around and manipulate things so that you can still get the deal done and be creative, and everybody make it a win-win. Sometimes the buyers are willing to pay for it. Sometimes our appraisal or BPO would come in low and they knew it was worth more and they didn't care, so they'd pay a $60,000 IRS lien. Sometimes we would get it moved from a lien on the house just to a personal judgment. So then the seller could then work out with whoever that was, mechanics lien, IRS, whatever, a second, their own payment arrangement or whatever. As long as the lien comes off the house, I don't care, How long will it take for a payoff statement is an important question if it's in foreclosure, because you have to wait for foreclosure attorneys to get all of their costs and charge you for gathering all of their costs, because they charge for everything, and then get it to the loan servicer, and then the loan servicer has to do a reconcile, depending on if all invoices are in on BPOs or property inspections or not, all of that. So it can take, usually it's about 5 to 7 business days. It could take up to 14 business days though, just depending on how busy they are and all of that. So that is a question that you need to ask, because you really need to know what you're dealing with. And then always ask them, what else do I need to know? What am I missing? What else can you tell me? I like that question at the end, even when I'm dealing with negotiations now to this day. I say, so what else do I need to know? And keep your mouth shut and let them talk, you know. Here's my HOA slide. Pay it. HOAs, believe it or not, can foreclose. A lot of times HOAs will foreclose themselves and then rent out the property and use it as income. And then when the first lien forecloses, then the HOA gets paid their $6 or $7 grand or whatever is allowable in Colorado. And then they've also made all that extra rental income. They do it in Florida all the time on condos, all the time. I think I had one that the HOA owned like 58% of the complex because they had foreclosed and they were renting it out. It was right next to the beach. So to me, again, I don't have an HOA, and if I did, I would pay that before I bought food. I'm that serious. Yeah, in some states, Colorado is one of them. That supersedes the first mortgage. Not necessarily meaning that they'll get paid something by the first mortgage either way, is what that means. All right, so we're gonna go a little bit over, so I apologize here. So how do your clients proceed? If you're impacted, if your clients are impacted, if you need help, the loan servicer, I put the guy you pay your bill to, the mortgage holder, whatever, call them immediately and let them know. Don't go delinquent without telling them that you're in trouble. I just lost my job. I just took a pay reduction, whatever that is. Save all of the money that you were going to pay to your mortgage. If they're not taking payments except for everything that you owe and you don't have everything, save as much as you can. Keep it if you can. If the servicer tells you call them back in 5 days, you call them back in 4 days, 3 days, whatever. Be patient with these phone reps. They're busy and it's a stressful job. And at the end of the day, they're going to be the ones that are helping you. And if you're a dick to them, they might be a dick back, you know, and they don't have to be nice because they're a loan collector. They just can't be harassing, you know? And so play fair, play nice. So these are questions that your client should ask if they're seeking assistance. It doesn't matter if it's a short sale. It doesn't matter if it's a foreclosure or, you know, if they're being referred to foreclosure, if they're trying to get a loan mod, a repayment, disaster mod, forbearance, it doesn't matter. These are things that they need to be asking them. What options are available to me? What paperwork do you need for me to apply for these options? How long before I have an answer? How often should I follow up? Will you call me or should I call you? Most of these mortgagors, loan servicers are on campaigns on a dialer, so they'll call them and update them. So, you know, on our loan mods, I'd say, don't call me, I'll call you. And I'd call them every 2 days because the dialer made me call them every 2 days, right? Just if you see my phone number, please answer the phone. Sometimes it's going to be a generic recording that says, did you know you still owe us money? And sometimes it will be me. So just please answer every time. If it's a recording, hang up. If it's me, I'll talk to you, you know, and give me a second if they're being called. Hello, click. Give them a second. They're on a dialer. So if they're on another call, like they have to wait for that person to be off the call that's why you get that dead air with bill collectors for a little bit. So give them a second because they really likely need to talk to you and you want to stay in communication with them. Where do I get the paperwork? Am I going to have a specific agent assigned to me? Or am I going to just work with whoever answers the phone? If I have a specific agent, am I still working with whoever? Because you can have an agent assigned to the account and anyone here can help you. That's the way it was on the mod side on SLS. The short sale negotiation, it used to be that way and then it switched. And who knows what it is now. Do you communicate by email? I was one of the only ones that was even allowed to send emails, and I never could send anything in writing about any part of the process because, first of all, you don't want it in writing. And second of all, it wasn't my decision, you know, and even if I would say you're missing XYZ docs and then they ended up missing something else, was there financial or legal liability in that? Blah, blah, blah. So some of them communicate by email, some of them don't. Find out if they can. What if this goes beyond the time frame that I anticipated? So what if I'm not getting a paycheck for right now? If you work in a gym, let's say, you're not getting a paycheck until at least April 11th, right? Unless your gym decides to pay you because you're at home and the gym is closed. So what if this goes beyond April 11th? Right now it's April 11th. What happens if it turns into May? What happens if it turns into June? So find out, you know, if all of this doesn't go like we're thinking it's going to go, or like people are expecting, it's changing daily. You know, what happens if I get a loan modification and I agree to a $2,000 a month payment, and then it turns out, because my wife's still making income, so she's a contributor, and then it turns out that she gets a pay reduction later on. How many times can I apply for assistance? You know, is this a once a year thing, a once a loan thing? Is this you need to pay for a year before you apply for something else? That will help dictate when people should be applying for assistance. If I apply for something and a better program comes out, do I need to reapply for that? Or am I just kind of reviewed for all of the options in a specific order? What we would call the waterfall. How will this impact my credit is a huge question. If I am going to apply for a forbearance, or if I am doing a deferral or a disaster mod or a loan mod or whatever, how is this going to report on my credit? With short sales, I'll tell you that it would report as settled for less than balance due, is how it would report on the credit, which is not positive. It's not as negative as the alternative, foreclosure, right? And except for the period of time that Obama had the 1099 waivers, any deficiency amount from the full payoff to what was actually paid would be given to the borrowers in a 1099, and they had to claim that as income for that tax year. There was a short reprieve period that Obama, it was like 2 years short. In that window, it was short. That was excluded from income. And you just want to know what financial impact it's making on your credit. If you get a forbearance and you didn't make a couple payments and it was just reporting the delinquency, now you're gainfully employed and you want to take out a HELOC because you planned on redoing your backyard or whatever, your credits, you're not going to mortgage for a little while, right? So really weigh those options. Do I need to be delinquent in order to request or be approved for assistance? Some, again, the CFPB said that people can apply, but doesn't mean that they have to give it to you. So what are my chances of getting this? If I've been showing that I'm gainfully employed and been making this payment, and I know I'm going to be delinquent, I'm going to apply. Are you going to deny me because I have a positive track record and I've paid everything up until now? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. You know, it depends on the investor, the servicer, what options are available, all of that. Will I be referred to foreclosure during this time? Is another question to ask. If you're going to be referred to foreclosure, so I'm just delinquent and I haven't been referred to the foreclosure process. I told you I'm selling the house. I've submitted my request for mortgage assistance. Does that stop the process so that I don't have those extra fees, or how can I avoid that? You know, and this, I would think that this is going to be a question and a situation that we see a lot of, that the people have equity. We're just really helping them sell and keep all of the cash that they can. And those foreclosure attorneys get expensive. So how do I stop it from going to foreclosure? Do I just send you an RMA even though I know I'm going to have a full payoff? Because that stops the clock. And how long does it stop the clock for? Is it 30 days? Because you have to get me an answer within 30 days. Or, you know, right now, the media is so flippin' deceiving. They said that foreclosure processes have stopped and things aren't being referred to foreclosure. It's total BS. According to the few people that I talked to, there are like, it was either Freddie or Fannie isn't referring anything new to foreclosure right now. There's a hold on it. That doesn't mean that that if it already was in foreclosure, that the foreclosure process isn't moving forward. That doesn't mean that if, I don't have my paper here to see if it was Fannie or if it was Freddie. It really doesn't matter. One follows the other. Freddie does it, Fannie does it, Fannie does it, Freddie does it. And those are traditional, like conventional loans is usually who backs those are Freddie and Fannies. And so it doesn't mean that they're not going to refer it to foreclosure. Maybe they just aren't going to move forward in the foreclosure process in some areas. And he said it literally was county by county, not even state by state, county by county. Some of them they were referring to foreclosure, some of them they weren't referring to foreclosure, some of them the foreclosure process was moving forward, some of them it's on hold. It also depended on what state, because if you stop it, then you have to restart it. So it's just going slower. Like it is such a wide variety of what can happen and what will happen. Ask about your loan and get as much information as you can about your loan. And then I covered this one. If you're already been referred to foreclosure, is the foreclosure process on hold while I seek assistance or not? I will tell you, I'll tell my borrowers or my sellers, if they have equity and they're selling to, they know that they're not going to be able to keep their house, we're selling the house because they don't want to do a loan modification, whatever it is. Even if they're not a short sale, I'm having them apply for a short sale either way, because it stops the foreclosure process or stops them from being referred to the foreclosure process, which then will keep as much money in their pockets as possible. And then they'll be denied for the short sale because it will be a full payoff, which is fine. I want to minimize the fees on the other side. NEDs. So this is how we can find business. Are you guys okay if we go over a little bit? If you need to leave, I get it. I'm cool with that. We're almost done. I don't see anybody except Gwen's face. So I'm just going to say, since you're still here, we're going to keep moving forward. And if you got to go, I get it. So the notice of election and demand is a NED. They're public record. They're available through each county. Title companies, other service providers will give you the lists. I found when I was seeking business off of the NEDs that I was I was door knocking. Cold calling on these was very difficult. I'm not sure if that's my drunk monkey or I didn't know any different. I just really felt like when I was in search for this business in particular, me knocking on the door and being in front of them built the relationship so much quicker. And it is such a sensitive subject that they could see that I wasn't just the vulture. I really truly wanted to help them. The process I followed was, let's get you to keep your house. Let's see what options are available to help you keep your house. If they got to keep their house, I was so happy. And if they didn't, then I'd say, okay, this is our next step though. And when I was saying, let's help you keep your house, I was giving them all options at that time. And it said, and we're not even going to talk about the deed in lieu of foreclosure, the short sale, the what foreclosure, whatever. just foreclosure is an alternative, or, you know, it is a loss mitigation option. It's not the one that you want, right? So we're not even going to talk about those until after we've worked through this. I just want to let you know all of your options, and this is the path that you're choosing to go down. I totally understand that, and I respect that, you know. Question. Still here listening, not gonna lie. She's so lost for the other day. Oh, one day I'll have a light bulb moment. I'm sorry. I was worried I wasn't gonna have enough material for 2 hours, and it turns out that there's a lot. And the good thing is that this is on replay, so you can totally watch it again. And I can give you a lot. I can answer questions one-on-one, and I'm sure if this becomes our world, we're gonna have a ton of classes on it, and it will probably be a 4-hour class, not a 2-hour class, you know. Door knocking is the way to go for sure. I'll let you know. I have lots of investors are also knocking. They hate that it's public record. They're in trouble. Coming from value is key, yet it still may get volatile on the porch, and that is the truth. You know, there are so many emotions. There is stress because you're delinquent. There's fear because you don't know what's going to happen. There's very likely fights that are going on in the house, you know, like relationships can be burdened by this. There's embarrassment because they're embarrassed that that they're even in this situation in the first place, especially if they've like been back to work for a little while and the servicer's not working with them. I know what's going on. I'm trying to get it taken care of. Why are you at my door? You know? So expect that could be the response. You will be getting the door slammed in your face if they even answer it, you know? It's just part of it, and come from contribution and come from care. That's my biggest advice. Yeah, and a lot of that, like Gwen says, it comes out in anger. All of that fear, all of the embarrassment, it comes into anger. So you have to be able to break down that wall in a very short period of time in order to move past that, to give them their options. And then once they see that you're there to care, then it gets a lot lighter. They also are very wary of scams, so they're very hesitant, and they should be, you know. Once they figure out that you're really not there for money, you're really working to help them, all of that, then the relationship builds and trust will build. And I would expect it to be rough on the conversations that you're starting to have at the beginning, and you'll hone your skills also. So start the conversation by helping them give their options to keep their house if that's their wish. Go over the options if they have to sell. Tell them not to pay anyone for services, that there's a ton of scams. Be sensitive. They're likely embarrassed. Oh, I have it in my slide, which can show up as anger. Have empathy. Let them know that there is no judgment. Also let them know that time is of the essence. Get something moving now. Foreclosure costs get very expensive very quickly. And so resources, CFPB is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, has a Find a Counselor tool. So you can get a list of counseling agencies that are approved by HUD. That's who you want them to be approved by, Housing and Urban Development. And then they also have the HOPE hotline that's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In most instances, I'm sure they're working from home right now too. So that's another good resource and a trusted resource. Just tell them to be careful. Be careful. I used to say, hey, I'm here to help. That way, if anyone in earshot is in earshot, you aren't telling their stuff. Yep. You know, and they're already, like, they'll yell at inspectors. I used to get borrowers that would call all the time and be like, another guy just came to my house. Well, he's doing a property inspection. Well, why is he here? you need to understand that we need to protect the asset, you know? So we're making sure that someone's living in it, someone's caring for it. As long as you are, we're good, we're out, you know? If you're not, we need to take the steps that we need to take to winterize the house, to secure the house, to take care of the yard so that people don't know it's vacant. Otherwise, we're not going to have copper pipes next week, you know, and that's the reality. Or we have squatters in there that we, in some states, need to evict. I don't know why you need to evict squatters. In some states you do. So this will be available on replay after Zoom does its whole record thing. It takes a little while. And then Amy will put it on our little website. If you guys haven't been to kwlttraining.com, there is a MISTA training. Click here, and then there's a video library. So this will be on the video library. What questions do you have? I also realized that I could not hear because my volume was down from when I was lead generating. Duh. So you can unmute yourself. I can hear now. And what ahas do you have? Britt, Justine, Gwen? I really hope I didn't talk for 2 hours and 20 minutes and there's no ahas. Gwen's chewing.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. No, I was just waiting because my dog was barking and it was really loud and I didn't want to, but I mean, I just made a lot of notes on a lot of the things that you said. And for me, it's just another value add when just like smaller talking points, even just to open up conversations as I'm doing my care calls and reaching out to people. And then I've been posting videos and just kind of like letting people know, hey, if you need any help or if you have any questions about this or that. So, I mean, I don't know, just that was my main thing, was making these little notes, because to take it all in at once is one thing, but there's going to be more questions that come up along the way.
There will
sure.
be. I mean, this is a whole process. There totally will be. And we don't even know if we're walking into a short sale world now. I would say what is more likely to happen is people are going to want the loan modification options and all of that. And also, hopefully, it's just, I need to sell my house and it will be a full payoff. So how do we protect as much as your equity as possible?
Right.
What else? Did I teach you anything you didn't know, Gwen?
More or less, I can see that the process of door knocking and that kind of stuff is relatively the same, and then you're coming at it as a person that's just adding value and guiding them, being the locking arms almost and saying, hey, let's do this together. I don't know where we're going to end up, but you don't want to be alone and they don't have anybody else to talk to because they don't want it out there to, and that I'm not their friend is a good thing, because they can walk away tomorrow and I have no judgment on them and they don't have to feel the shame of it, because it's very shameful. It's ugly, and that's what they're feeling. And if you can say, hey, I want to lock arms with you and just walk you through this process, it may go nowhere for the agent. You know, it may be that they do a loan mod and that's the best thing for them. But the fact that you've walked through it with them and didn't smell commissiony when you got there,
No commission breath?
Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. I mean, like, I'm out if this isn't going to benefit me. If it's best for you to walk through a loan mod, I'm gonna throw these papers at you and I'm on to the next door, will not serve you well, because it will follow you to the next door. It will be, what do you call it, karma or whatever. It will be apparent, and it will shut you down. Right. So you have to, if you're going to use this as one of your
Legs of your stool.
business legs. Yeah. I mean, you really must say, I want to be a resource. I want to help people. And if that means something, because if it doesn't mean anything for this one, it could mean something for something else. Because guess what? Birds of a feather. We all work at the bar together, and the bar shut down for a month and a half, and we're all in trouble. I know 5 other friends that are also in trouble, and a loan mod was good for me because so-and-so helped me put money down, but that person who has a CHAFA silent second or whatever like that, that is not good for them. They're walking away. What does that look like for them? And now because you've helped that person and it didn't work out for you, they're still going to say, hey, this girl will walk you through this, or this agent will walk you through this. They have been the best thing that we have found. I highly recommend them. And their brother-in-law is selling legit like we're doing right now. It's going to get you those kind of referrals. And it's just, I don't know. I wouldn't want this to be my only way I've gotten paid. I say that, and yet on the other side of that, my wheels are turning going, can I still buy the loans? I don't know if it's not going to work. I don't know. I don't know what, legal would say about it.
Well, and I don't know that there's like as many seconds and all of that, because there were so many seconds before because they were doing 80/20s.
Yeah, for sure.
So if there are HELOCs, they're more conservative HELOCs, there might be some old loans left over. Yeah. Right. There might be some old loans left over. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
or here's the other piece of it that I'm thinking is like, what about owner carries? I'm like, okay, you're stuck in a pickle, and they're like, I'm done. Well, if I'm going to hold it and maybe I want to turn it into, or thankfully right now I don't have any Airbnbs, but if I want to do long-term rentals and somebody's willing to say, hey, just take over my loan, can I do that as an agent? I don't know. Those kind of things.
There's also ways to, we forgot to talk about cash for keys. Cash for keys is basically like, if you cooperate, then you get money at closing, right? So if you cooperate and you sell the house, then we'll give you $3,000 to help you start over or whatever.
Mm-hmm. We did that beforehand, but not at closing.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the reality of it was that we had a gentleman he had a job if he had a car. And I was like, so you just need a car? Yeah, I need a car and I need all of this to go away. And I was like, okay, let's go look and see. Tell me about what kind of car you need. It just need to be running, blah, blah, blah. It was seriously $2,500 for a beater car. We went down there with them, signed, we gave the cash to the thing as he's signing the deed to us, the quitclaim, and we helped them move, and now we own the house, and that was our cash for keys. It's like a deed in lieu, but then we brought him current, and I'm like, it was a really great situation. Their situation may not be about the house as much as we might think. It might be, I've got a job, I just can't get there.
Right. Well, and another thing I was going to say is that it could even be that what if you listed their house and found an investor to buy it, and then they rent it to them, so they don't even have to move.
Well, as long as it's arm's length transaction, you could do that, but I couldn't. It
would have to be arm's length. Yeah. You would have to find an investor that had no relationship with the owner. Right.
Okay. So you'll need to wait. When we were doing it, actually, I think the banks wouldn't allow it because unless it was a full sale. Yeah. Okay. That's what it was.
Yeah. It's a full sale.
Yeah. A full sale. They could do that.
Right.
But they couldn't bring it current and leave. Yeah. We would, because we were bringing things current and then doing it from there, and the people were going. If they didn't leave, that was an issue. You could not rent it to them as the person who got kept the loan in place.
Well, I mean, technically anyone can pay the bill. No one cares. It's just, it's illegal to sign a quitclaim deed over to someone else. It's against the note rules.
Yes, if they knew
To
about it, but it was
assign it.
also on the market. So that's where we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to keep them in, but there was something about, it's probably in the note, about them staying in the property. It was against the foreclosure process for them to stay in the property and somebody else be having brought it current.
That's interesting. I'm
And it
because
might
I
have
had
been
a lot
around
of
the
third
quitclaim.
parties- Yeah, I had a lot of third parties that would bring them current, like, you know, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandmas, whatever. Now, assigning the deed to someone else, though, was illegal.
Maybe it was that.
Because,
It wasn't the one. It was.
yeah,
the
we didn't
two-
care who paid your bill. What we did
Right.
care about was who had in the note, it says that the title's not transferable.
Right. Yeah, we did that before you knew. Because ultimately
right.
you're getting all your money.
Right. Yeah. As long as we got money, we didn't care. And with your thing, that wouldn't have flown if we would have known about it. And it still would have required attorneys and all of that to go through. And so as
That's
long
why
as
we
it's
did.
sold and we got paid, we didn't care, you know?
We didn't involve your pretty little head about that.
Right. There is a, anything else from anyone? Because there's a thing that starts at 3:30 that the region's putting on that I would like to be on. It's 20
good.
things that you can do now.
I got a parent or something.
As a parent, I'm kind of parenting.
Yeah, the thing on the that the region's putting on, it's like 20 things that you can do now in this market or something. So
Oh, cool.
catch that.
Okay. Thank
The
you.
links on the KWLT. You're welcome. Hope it was
Okay.
good and informational and worth
Yes.
your time. And let me know if you have questions. And I mean, the short sale thing, it may happen, it may not happen. The loan modification, helping people with their options, and especially the questions that they should be asking and that you can help be asking is, I think, the most valuable part. Educate the people and just know it's okay to say, hey, I have some questions. If you are thinking about talking to your mortgage servicer about different options, if you get to a point that you're not able to pay, like, don't assume that they can't pay. I have a list of questions prepared that might help you, you know, and I don't mind sending it to you anyway. And then if any of your friends are seeking help, have it sent to them. And then that way they're not like, you know, some people could be like, oh, I don't want her to know I can't pay my mortgage, right? So now the information is in their hands and it could be valuable to them, even if they're not willing to tell you. And the branded document just gets sent on to someone else who is in need, you know, and say, if anyone needs it, give me a call. So. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Sorry we ran over.
Oh, that's fine.
you.
Thanks.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye.
too.
Bye.